So we're here in Joe's office with
Uh-huh.
Anne Abgott,
Mm-hmm.
currently a resident of Bradenton, Florida, and workshop instructor and artist extraordinaire. And looking up on your website, it looked like you got about 21 workshops this year. So you're keeping pretty busy.
Yeah, I am. I don't tend to back them up to each other, but I tend to do the big ones, the away ones, on probably one a month.
Okay.
I guess if I did. Then in my own area, what I do is I have a wonderful art store, very
Yeah.
similar to Cheap Joe's here, a local art store that I like to support, keep them in business. And I have a schedule of 12 to 15 one-day classes with them.
Uh-huh.
And it's a one-day class that starts at 10 and ends at 3:30, 4 o'clock. And it's a theme. They know before they come in the image or the idea of the class that day. You know, I might do textured, I might do painting on a textured gessoed surface.
Uh-huh.
I do a lot of different things. This coming year I'm going to do a portrait,
Okay.
painting a portrait. So I mix it up. You know, I challenge them to do something for their kitchen or their friend's kitchen, and make that vegetables and
Yeah,
fruits that I've
yeah.
taken. And so,
Well, let's. I know you've been painting for a long time,
Mhm.
and I would like to incorporate. Tell us a little bit about Anne Abgott, and maybe start when you realized that you were an artist.
Well, I still am a little bit in awe of the fact that I can paint, but when I grew up in Canada, my mother was friends with a lady who was very well known in Canadian art circles. Her name was Margaret McLaughlin, but she painted under the name of Alexander Luke.
Okay.
And Alexander Luke used to take her lady friends out painting with her.
Okay.
It was oils, and she painted plein air. And she was very kind to a very young teenager, and I would tag along. So I painted in oils, and I had a high school art teacher, Dorothy Van Leuven. She encouraged me. And then, you know, went off to school, got married, and never touched anything. Crafty type things. I was
Right,
always
right.
doing something crafty. And then in 1992, when I moved to Florida, I was married and my husband had a home in Florida,
Uh-huh.
and we used to go down there periodically. One of my neighbors said to me, "Would you ever like to take a watercolor class?" I took the watercolor class with her. She dropped out after the second class, and I became obsessed.
Okay.
And then I just started looking for wherever and whomever I could take a class from. And that's what I did. And I literally just painted my brains out. That's the only way it happens. I couldn't wait to get up every morning to paint.
So how would you describe your art technique? What would, if you had?
Well, I think it comes from oil painting.
Okay.
I think that I have no patience at all for glazing. I like to push the paint into the paper.
Okay.
It was an eye-opening experience. There's an artist by the name of Karen Vernon. She lives in Texas.
Okay.
And she encouraged me to get off of hot press paper, which I was on, and onto 300 pound. And of course I said exactly what everybody else says. Oh, that's so expensive. Well, it made the whole difference in what my paintings look like. So I push a lot of paint into the paper in much the style of an oil painter. That's what I think. And I love beautiful colors. So I immediately was drawn to the transparency, and I just kept, all of a sudden I got a contract for a book, and I described what I was doing as mingling, and I realized that's what I was doing. I very seldom mix a pigment or mix a color on my palette.
Okay.
I let the paints mix together and make the colors for me.
Okay.
So I have a book called Daring Color that's been very successful, and that's the mingling technique that I use.
Okay.
So
So you're not just, you do portraits, you do landscapes.
I
you
paint
do-
almost everything. I'm not a big fan of landscapes.
Okay.
Too much green for me.
Too much
But
green,
some of
okay.
them I do like, but I'm not drawn to landscapes, but I'm drawn to everything else.
Okay.
This past couple of months, I've played around with alcohol inks.
Okay, yeah.
I played around with marbling. I've tried a lot of different things that I've told myself for years that I was going to do and never did.
Right.
I get together with a group. We have 5 or 6 girls, and we get together once a week if we can, and we try different things.
Okay.
And then we also just paint sometimes.
So when you get the paper, you approach the paper,
Mhm.
you've got your palette, you've got your water
Mhm.
and your brushes. What are you doing at that point? Are you like?
Well, first of all, I take all my own images. I photograph all my own images.
Okay.
So the image just kind of calls to me, and I will sort through images and find 3 or 4 that they just say, paint me, paint me.
Okay.
And it can be almost anything. And so I take the image, and now I've begun playing with it on the computer a little. But I take the image, and that's where it starts.
Okay.
I dream about certain images
Oh.
or certain photographs that I've
Okay.
got. So,
And the reason I ask a question is because in interviewing Linda Baker, she approaches her painting as telling a story.
yes.
I talked to Frank Webb a couple of weeks ago. He approaches painting as a compositional exercise.
Uh-huh.
And the composition comes first, the color comes second.
Uh-huh.
So that's kind of the
The-
essence of the question.
The image comes first. The image comes first, the technique comes second,
Okay.
the color comes third.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you're-
I'm not philosophical,
Okay.
so I guess, I really admire a painting that calls to me, that someone else has done and tells
Right.
a story. I gave a big award to a painting in Houston that just spoke to me because I had read a book or listened to a book. I
Right.
listen to books on tape while I paint. And it had been about the Irish and the terrible time they had working in the coal mines in England. And the painting just said, oh my God, that's an Irish coal worker. And he's
Uh-huh.
just taken a bath and left that soap and that dirty wash rag there. And so yes, I do admire it, but it isn't my thing.
Right. Okay. So when did you transition from being an artist who painted to a instructor? How did that happen?
Oh, well. I was taking a class from a man, and he announced at the end of the class one time that he was not coming back next year, but not to worry because he had told the art center I would teach. I was absolutely in shock. I was totally in shock. And I told the art center that, well, I might do a couple of little things, but I really couldn't teach. I didn't know anything about it. And that was the driving force. I didn't know anything about it, but I knew what I wanted in a class.
Right. Right.
So I worked really hard at giving them everything I thought a student should have.
Okay.
And that's how it all happened. I
Okay.
was thrown right into it.
You're thrown into it.
Yes.
So you come to Cheap Joe's. You've got a full class. What is your goal for that class? You must have some kind of idea what you want them to leave with.
I want them to leave with nothing but the desire to paint more and get better. I want them to be excited. I want them to have a little burning in their stomach to paint every day.
And what are some of the things you tell them during the week to facilitate that?
Talk to them about taking their own images, how they can find things that are exciting to them, to analyze when they go through an art book or a magazine, what are they drawn to, and to move on from there.
Uh-huh.
If they like abstraction, that to find a good DVD or a good book on abstraction, but paint paint what excites them.
Right.
You know, you paint for three, that I call it the 3 P's.
Okay.
Pleasure, profit, and what's the word? I can't think of it. Oh, pleasure, profit, and prestige.
And prestige.
Prestige are the signatures after your name in the books and the
Right.
DVDs, and the profit is self-explanatory, and the pleasure is self-explanatory.
So this week you've got a couple ranked beginners,
I do.
and then you have some that have taken.
I have
Many
7
work-
people that have repeated, which
Right.
I'm very flattered by that. Yeah.
We call you a popular artist.
Well,
at
thank you.
Judge,
Thank
so,
you.
So you always fill your classes, and so if you were to be any artist in history, who would that artist be?
I want to be remembered as somebody who gave everything that she knew and that lent a helping hand to every artist or wannabe artist that comes along. I want to be remembered as being very generous with my knowledge. I don't have great aspirations to be Monet or whatever, but
Right. Well, if you could be any artist, who would that artist be? Any artist in history?
George O'Keeffe.
George O'Keeffe. Okay.
I love the idea of going off to some remote area and just living and painting.
Which
think
she
that-
did in, was it New Mexico? Did
She was in New Mexico,
New
yeah.
Mexico, I love George
Taos.
O'Keeffe.
Yeah.
The first book I ever gave my wife, who was not my wife at the time, was the big George O'Keeffe book.
Oh, yes, I have
And
that.
seeing some of her stuff at the Metropolitan or the Museum of Modern Art up close and personal,
It's awe-inspiring. She had the ability to be somewhat realistic, but then very abstract at the same
Right,
time.
right.
I like that a
which
lot.
is what you do.
I'm trying.
I mean, you're taking images from reality,
yes.
and then you're adapting them to your way of seeing that.
What I'm trying to do, my goal for me right now is I want to get the wow factor. I
Okay.
want people to say, wow, you know.
I want to hang that in my living room.
Yeah,
right?
well, you know, I should be more conscious about selling. I'm not. I should be. I paint 2 ways. I paint for to sell,
Okay.
not enough, and I paint for competition a lot.
Okay.
First blue ribbon I ever won was kind of the kiss of death for me. I really craved that. Like to win the awards.
Yeah, I've interviewed many artists
Yes.
lately, and
Yeah.
I don't think anybody that I've talked to paints because they're trying to win awards. They're all painting, like you say, because you have a desire to express what you're seeing on the paper.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
The wow factor.
Yeah, wow factor, yes.
It's one of the quotes I like in talking to Robert Burridge.
Oh, yes.
And Robert always tells his classes, if you're not enjoying it, why are you doing it? I mean, it's kind of like, and I found that one of the common threads amongst all artists is their desire to create something on that paper.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess you call it the wow factor. Everybody has a different word for what they're trying to
Yeah.
do. So you get in and you get out, right?
Get in and get out.
And then I've talked to some artists who they're very meticulous, but
Mhm.
yet at the end it looks like they just threw the paint on the paper.
Oh, I saw Barbara Netch's, I watched a demo that she did once, and I just could not believe how controlled she was.
Right.
And the paintings she creates look like they just floated onto the
Right.
paper. Yes, sometimes it's very deceiving what we all do.
Yeah, it's interesting how different artists portray the same thing.
Right.
Janet Walsh, for instance.
Yes.
She can use little dabs of paint to make a person look like their person. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know how she does it. I mean, it's just, and you can do the same kind of thing with your colors to make that
It's all
subject
in-
look like
all
the
in
subject.
the eye. It's
Yeah.
all in the eye. It's the way you see it, you
Yeah,
know.
so you're just taking little pieces and
Yeah.
putting them together, and then our minds, I guess, create the rest. Right?
That's what I
Yeah.
try to do. Yes.
So, what's in the future for Anne Abgott?
Right now, I have 3 new DVDs that have come out because I got a little bored with what I was doing and decided to learn the computer, which I was
Okay.
deathly afraid of. And so I've come up with working with actually making my own opaque paint
Okay.
and using opaques and taking actually photographs that I've taken over the years that I thought were complete failures, and when I played with them on the computer, they became something that was just very
Right.
impressive. I took a photograph at night with my children at a club, and it was just, it looked like nothing, and then when I played with it with the computer, it became amazingly exciting and got published in a magazine.
And you can lighten and darken.
Oh yeah, and change the colors,
Yeah,
and
you can,
all the figures at the table became abstracted darks.
Right.
It was very interesting. So
Yeah.
that's kind of exciting me for now. I like that. I've got a nice teaching schedule ahead of me. I hope to get into NWS and AWS, and I always want to get out of bed in the morning and paint. Always.
so
I don't-
AWS and NWS, that's on your bucket list.
No,
right?
they were on my bucket
They
list,
were
and
on.
I got those signatures, but I still want to get into those shows,
Okay.
and I would like to start to win some awards in those shows.
Yeah.
So yes, I haven't given up. I'm not sitting back. I'm working harder than ever.
Yeah.
I think that's the misconception. The people that are in the room over there taking classes from me, they think that every time I paint something, it's good and it's right and it's a success. It's not. I have as many failures as they do. So I have piles of them.
Has there ever been a period in your life where you just couldn't do it, and how did you overcome that period if you had one?
I've recently had a kind of a bad thing happen in my life, and it was tough. And I've learned that even when I'm not painting, I'm cooking, and I
Okay.
don't mean food.
Okay.
I go to the library, I borrow books, I go through all my old magazines, and as I look and see what everybody else is doing, it really inspires me to keep on.
Right.
I was dragged kicking and screaming into Facebook,
Okay.
and my daughter put me on Facebook, and now every day we've got John Solomon and Mark Mahaffey, Linda Baker, all posting things that they're painting. And when you see what the other artists are doing out there, that inspires you.
Yeah.
So
when the well runs dry, you go to the library and Facebook
I
to
cook.
try to.
I cook.
You cook. You try to fill the well back up.
Yeah.
And,
Sometimes you have it. Sometimes you have to just sit and contemplate and go through your images. Maybe clean out a file. I tend to rip things out of magazines with ideas, and so you can stoke the fire by doing that.
Right. So it's not all glorious.
No,
being an
it's
artist.
not. It's very, very hard work.
Yeah.
Ted Nuttall told me a story. He said he was at Cheap Joe's teaching a workshop, and that's at the end of the first day, a lady came up and stood beside him and looked at him and said, "Am I supposed to be having fun?" And Ted said it took him back, and he had to stop and think for a minute. And he said, "No, this is hard work.
Yeah.
It is." And I think the better you get and the more that you accomplish or people think you have accomplished, the harder you have to work.
Yeah. Well, they loved Ted this year. That was.
He's a great guy.
But Ted is one of those artists that make it look easy,
Oh,
but yet he's very, very, very
Oh, if you watch him paint,
structured.
very
Layers
structured.
upon layers
Uh-huh,
upon layers.
yeah.
You're kind of the exact opposite
I
of
am.
that. No.
I am, yeah.
I like both your work. I mean, I think that
Thank you.
there are certain subjects that you tackle that I'm drawn to.
Like what?
I think I'm visualizing the rows of paintings in the room right now.
Oh, yeah,
I'm trying
yeah.
to come up with slight memory loss here, but I think it's the colors that, and not necessarily the subject itself.
The
What I
colors.
was trying
Yeah,
to say, 'cause
yeah, it could be.
you've got 10 paintings on that wall over
Right.
there,
Yeah.
and I'm going, okay, yeah, this is something I can hang on my living room
Yes,
wall.
yeah.
So I guess in finishing, I always ask the same question.
Yeah.
Do you have any Cheap Joe stories, any kind of memory of Cheap Joe himself, or
Oh, yeah.
that you could
I
share with?
remember being here when I won't give the name, but there was an artist teaching here, and he was a little difficult, and Joe took him home to his house because he wasn't happy with the hotel. I just remember wonderful. Yeah. Joe is one of the most generous, wonderful guys, and he's a credit to the world. I mean, he told me a story about how he started.
Right.
This story has that been repeated on camera?
Not that I
He was
can
given
remember,
he
right.
was given a certificate to take watercolor class, and he went to Charlotte because there were no art stores in
Right.
this area. Charlotte's about 2 hours away, and bought his art supplies. And on the way home, he was thinking about how he just spent $26 on a brush, and he said to himself, "There has to be a cheaper way." So he had the reps calling on him at the drugstore,
Right.
and he kept approaching them well, could you sell me some art supplies? I want to sell art supplies. Nobody would do it. So he said he had one rep that had some art supplies, and he took him out for dinner, got him drunk, and got his first order.
Right.
I heard that story.
Yeah, I've seen the story, and I've
Yeah.
written it. And,
Oh, you have? Okay.
But I don't think anybody has heard it
Okay.
online right
Okay.
now. But this next year will be our 30th year.
Oh, I see.
So
Okay.
we celebrate 30 years of
That's fabulous.
bringing art supplies to people who want to do art, and, specifically watercolor.
Right.
Although of course, we sell oils and acrylics and alcohol inks and
Yes.
pens and pencils and paper. And so I think at one point we were the biggest seller of Arches paper in the
Oh,
world.
yes. Yeah.
We may still be. So.
Yeah.
Well, Anne, it's been a pleasure talking
pleasure
to you,
for me.
and
Yeah.
hopefully you have many, many more years of
Well, thank you. I
painting
appreciate
and
it.
instructing and
Yeah.
inspiring students to.
You know, every year I come here, I think, well, this will probably be the last because I'm not going to fill again. So I'm thrilled every year. I'm thrilled to be asked, and it's such an honor to teach here. If you get asked to teach here, you should be very flattered.
We are one of the premier.
You are. Yes,
yeah.
you are.
Uh,
The best.
And I get to talk to a lot of people. And we're glad to have you.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.